What's going on, guys? It is Logan here, back with another video. I got Noah here with me, and we got a special guest today. This is our friend Hunter, and today we're going to be going over the NCAA Tournament bracket, talking about our favorites, teams we think could be Cinderella stories this year, and then going region by region, just breaking it down, talking about some matchups and stuff like that. So we've got our brackets pulled up here. I'm going to go ahead and start. We're going to just talk about maybe our 2 to 3 favorites, we think. And I'm going to start with Duke, obviously. I think everyone should have Duke as one of the favorites, just obviously because they got 3 of the best players in the country right now. They've had some tough games against, obviously, North Carolina and some other teams, but I think Duke has got to be in everyone's favorites. The second team I'm going to say is North Carolina, and that's just because of how hot North Carolina has been. Since probably January or so. I'm a Michigan fan, obviously, and in November, Michigan handed it to North Carolina pretty good. But since then, North Carolina has improved a lot and gotten a lot better. So that's probably my second team. And then my third team, I'm going to say as a favorite, would probably have to be Virginia. I think after losing as a 1 seed last year, Virginia kind of has a chip on their shoulder, and they're like, ready to prove that was. I don't think it was a fluke just because UMBC played so well, but they want to prove that that's not going to happen again. They're not going to get upset, and I think Virginia's my third. So all 3 of the top ACC schools are my favorites. So Hunter, who's your top 3?
My top favorite has got to be Carolina. Being a Carolina fan, and they've been hot. I mean, yeah, like Logan was saying, Michigan handed it to them, and then I think ever since then, they've just been everyone's been clicking, because you go in, you want to worry about Luke May or just Cody White, but you worry about one guy, you have another guy go off. It's crazy to see. And then obviously Duke's going to be the other favorite because when they're clicking too, they're a dangerous team. And then my third favorite, I'm honestly going to go with Michigan State just because all around they're a good defensive team and they play as an absolute unit. And I think that if they get and play Duke in the Elite Eight, that would be a good game. And I think Michigan State can carry that and end up winning it, honestly.
Yeah, I think I'm going to kind of differentiate and try and talk about some different teams, but I think Kentucky is always a dangerous team come March because, it always is a lot of freshmen, not quite like Duke in the recent years, but it's a lot of freshmen that John Calipari does a good job of getting them to grow as a team over the course of the season. I think they obviously have a lot of talent, and now they're starting to play better as a team. I think another SEC school, Tennessee, has got a lot of talent there. They were one of the top teams all season long. They were 1 seed at one point. And then, just to make Logan happy, I'm going to say Michigan. They always play really good defense, which is always a good thing come tournament time, and it'll help them a lot. And I think they are returning a lot of the guys from the team that made the championship last year. So they have that experience to make a deep run. I think that they always play better in March.
Yeah, so moving on from that, we're going to talk about some dark horses and Cinderella potentials for this year. I'm going to start, I'm going to say Syracuse, actually. Syracuse last year upset Michigan State in the second round. And Syracuse, obviously Jim Boeheim, legendary coach, would have a second round matchup with Gonzaga if they were to win in the first round. And I think that could be a potential upset. So Syracuse is an 8 seed, obviously. So, you could say Cinderella or not. We've had an 8 seed make the national championship before. But they are a lower seed, and they would have to pull off an upset, obviously. I'm going to say Syracuse as my first potential Cinderella or dark horse team. There's a lot of interesting 5-12 matchups this year. I'm also going to say Murray State. Obviously, I think a lot of people are going to pick Murray State as a potential Cinderella just because Ja Morant. If he can go off against Marquette, that'll be a good matchup, I think. And then they could potentially have a second-round matchup against FSU. So that's another team in that West region. To kind of go away from that region, there's a lot of really intriguing lower seeds this season. And this isn't a super low seed, but I would also say Cincinnati as another dark horse. Obviously, I think the first round matchup against Iowa will be good, but I think Cincinnati can win that. And then that Cincinnati-Tennessee game that could be happening in the second round would be, I think, a really, really good game. So there's a lot of really interesting teams that you could talk about for dark horses this year, but those are my top 3.
Yeah, my top one has got to be Oregon just because they were given that 12 seed and they're rolling off a conference championship, and they're probably one of the hottest teams in the country right now. And I know that South region's filled with a bunch of slow-paced teams, and I just feel like Oregon, they can get matchups, and I don't know, they can make a run. Like, I feel like, yeah, that would be one of my top one. And then it's tough looking for another one, just because I feel like there's a lot of like double-digit seeds that could make a run, but like their matchups in the second round, just maybe New Mexico State, honestly,
Yeah, I was gonna throw them in too.
because I know Auburn loves the 3-ball, and they've gotten hot with that, but Auburn goes cold, and then you have Kansas, who's having an average year, who New Mexico State could get hot and make a run right there and make it to Sweet 16, and that would be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think this isn't necessarily would be a Cinderella team, but I think teams are kind of writing off, or people are kind of writing off, is Villanova. They're a 6th seed coming off the national championship. I know they lost a lot of talent, but they still always have, solid team. And I think Jay Wright is the coach.
Yeah,
Jay Wright. Okay. And you can't write him off. You can't write his teams off. I think that they'll go a lot further than an average 6 seed would. And then I think that there's a lot of, some of the big time upset picks are like Yale or LSU, and like you guys said, Northeastern over Kansas. I think that just beating one of those big teams could give one of those teams a lot of confidence to perhaps win another game or two.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how far they'd be able to go with that, considering the matchups they'd have against North Carolina or Duke very quickly. But I think that beating a big team like that could give one of those teams a lot of confidence going forward.
Yeah, I think Yale, honestly, thinking back, because I know they played Duke in December, and they hung with Duke like the whole first half until they started turning the ball over and Duke pulled away. Like, Yale, I know if they beat LSU, they definitely have the confidence to knock off some top-tier schools, and that would be interesting if they could pull that off.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different teams, anywhere from the range of like 6 or 7 to like 11 or 12 that could make runs this year for sure. And we typically always have a seed in that range that makes a Sweet 16 or Elite 8 run. Obviously, last year with Loyola being an 11 seed making the Final Four, I personally don't think we'll have another double-digit seed make the Final Four, but we could have a lower like 6, 7, 8 seed, something like that, make it pull off some upsets. So now we're just going to go region by region, kind of talk about not necessarily who we have. We'll talk about who we have picked, but we'll also talk about some intriguing matchups that will happen in each region. We're going to start with the East region, obviously Duke and Michigan State's region. Second round matchups, or first round matchups, I guess we could talk about. Obviously LSU Yale is a popular upset pick. I'm interested to see how Belmont plays against Maryland. Liberty and Mississippi State is another popular one. So a lot of intriguing upset picks there too. So what do you guys have to say about that?
Yeah, definitely some. Yeah, I have Yale LSU as like a big game to watch because LSU with the whole scandal and all that, it would be interesting. A lot going around in that, and yeah, I like the second weekend going in like Duke UCF. That could be a good game because I know UCF has that 7-footer that's
Taco Fall.
Yeah, he could turn it on, and I know when Duke, if they can't shoot the 3 and they get out rebounded, it's gonna be a tough game. And
I just want to see one time Zion go try and dunk on Taco Fall, just see what happens.
Yeah, probably would.
Probably will, but I just think that'd be fun.
Yeah, but there's a lot of interesting matchups that could happen.
And also, I'll just go ahead and start, and then we'll go back to Hunter real quick before going to Noah. In that region, I've got Duke and Michigan State in the Elite 8. I think that's probably what most people have. Yeah, Hunter's got that too. Noah, Duke and Michigan State. Yeah, that's probably. I mean, I don't really see any of those middle seeds being able to make a run, especially having Duke and Michigan State in that region. That's just really, really tough region. So I think Duke, Michigan State are probably one of those teams is probably going to come out of that region. So anything else about that?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's hard to, I think there's some teams you could see go down early. I just can't see Duke going down. I think the earliest they could possibly get upset is Elite 8, but I still don't see that happening.
Right.
I think Duke's a pretty safe bet if you're going to pick somebody.
Yeah. I mean, Duke is, obviously a safe bet. I think Virginia Tech could potentially upset Duke. We'll see how that goes. But, I mean, Duke had they scraped by in a few ACC games this year. They lost to Syracuse. That's another reason that I like Syracuse.
They lost to Virginia Tech early in the season.
Lost to Virginia Tech.
Without Zion, but...
Right, had the game winner against Florida State. Yeah. So there's a lot of middle-of-the-pack ACC teams that I think could do pretty well. But I think Duke and MSU, 1 and 2 seed, obviously are the two favorites out of that region. So moving on to the West. This, I think, is the most intriguing region. Just because you've got, obviously, Gonzaga, I think most people would agree they're probably the weakest 1 seed. As of right now, I know Gonzaga beat Duke in the regular season very early on, but going into tournament time, I think if you had to pick the worst or the, 1 seed that probably won't make it as far, most people pick Gonzaga. Obviously got Michigan as a 2 seed, and then those middle seeds in that region are very intriguing. Texas Tech, Florida State, who obviously beat Gonzaga in the Sweet 16 last year, and could potentially be facing them again in this year's Sweet 16. And then you got Marquette, obviously. Buffalo is really intriguing to me just because they had such a good year. Obviously, they're in a smaller conference, not as good of a conference, so that's why they're a 6 seed. But they went something like 30-3, like a really, really good record. And I think come tournament time, it doesn't matter what conference you're in. If you're used to winning, you have the upper edge, I think, in tournament time. So that West region, I've got Gonzaga and Michigan in the Elite Eight. I think, obviously, 1 and 2 once again. But I would not be surprised if a team like Texas Tech or a team like Florida State or Buffalo makes it to the Elite Eight and potentially out of that region.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting region. I got the Zags and Texas Tech coming out of that region. And, yeah, just looking at the teams, there's some good games, especially that second weekend. Because Buffalo, they're a hot team, and even last year, they knocked off Arizona, I think.
I believe so, yeah.
They were the team that knocked off Arizona, so definitely a lot of games to look forward to this first weekend.
Yeah, I think, Florida State beat Virginia in the ACC tournament, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, they lost to Duke, but...
On a buzzer beater, yeah.
No, I'm saying in the championship
Oh,
too.
right,
But yeah,
right,
they did
right.
lose early in the season on that. And I think that they could definitely make a run. I think in this bracket I have Murray State making a run for some reason. I just thought John Morant was just going to, when I was doing this one. But I think Florida State and Michigan would probably be the matchup I'd have to pick. And that would just be a really good game. I think that one could be exciting. But then also, you do have, I think you guys were saying the guy on Marquette too.
Yeah, Marcus Howard.
It could be just like practically one-on-one
Yeah.
between them two. I think that would be a really fun back-and-forth game to watch. So a lot of talent definitely in that region.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's an interesting region right there, and obviously throw in Syracuse too, being an ACC school. They're gonna been playing against good competition. So moving to the South region, obviously this is Virginia and Tennessee as the 1 and 2, which I think is a really interesting 1 and 2 potential matchup. Obviously in the Elite Eight, I think Wisconsin could potentially make a run if they're at their best. Being a Big Ten guy, I've seen Wisconsin, and I know what they can do if they're at full strength. I think Kansas State as a 4 seed is a little interesting. They did have a really good season, but obviously you got people picking that Oregon upset and potentially UC Irvine. I know Noah talked about Villanova. Purdue, I think, is an interesting team right there because I could see a really good Purdue versus Tennessee matchup in the Sweet 16. And I also talked about a really good Cincinnati and Tennessee matchup in the second round. So I think Tennessee's got a really, really tough path. I think Virginia will be all right. I think they'll make it to the Elite Eight with fairly easy, unless they get upset again this year. But I wouldn't be surprised if someone other than Tennessee makes it out of that bottom part of the South region.
Yeah, definitely an interesting region. I got Virginia and Tennessee making it out. Yeah, Tennessee definitely got a tough draw, but I mean, I watched their game against Kentucky, and I know Grant Williams and Schofield, they turned it on, and they can turn it on when it's important. And I think a big matchup it's Friday, it would be Wisconsin-Oregon. Like, that's a big game, and two teams that could possibly make a run at Virginia. So it's definitely an interesting region.
Yeah, I think they're one of the more stacked regions in there because, like you guys basically talked about a lot of the matchups, but it is a lot of teams that are built for March that are not just like, really talented, but also they play well together, well coached. So, I mean, there's a number of teams you could see coming out. I got Virginia and Villanova, but, I mean, you got a number of teams.
And very experienced, too. Obviously,
Right.
Virginia is very experienced in the tournament. Villanova. Tennessee, I mean, they've just the last couple of years kind of turned it on in March.
Coach, Rick
Do you have an
Lawrence.
experienced coach? Purdue is very experienced. Carson Edwards, who was, all first team Big Ten, he's a beast. When he turns it on, when Carson Edwards I see is like a Russell Westbrook type guy, he might shoot 2 of 17 or he might, go off for 30 points. So Purdue's intriguing there. There's a lot of teams like that, I think, that if they can turn it on, if their star player just goes off, kind of like Marquette and Murray State, Purdue,
Maryland's a team.
Maryland, yeah. I think there's a lot of teams that it's like if they catch fire at the right time, then it could be scary.
Yeah, that's why it's tough this year to pick because you don't know you don't know which team is gonna show up. Like, because I feel like there's a bunch of teams that have like two faces. Like, when the team's playing good, they could beat anyone, but when the team's bad, like they're just average. But it'll definitely be interesting to see who shows up.
Like even with Duke, Zion's been pretty consistent all year, but R.J. Barrett disappears when there's 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and Cam Reddish is like, Cam Reddish is just like, I don't want to be a third option, so I'm not going to play basketball.
Exactly.
It's just really interesting to watch.
Yeah, it will be interesting.
So that's the South region. I'd say Virginia's pretty much the favorite out of that region, and then Purdue and Tennessee, the 2 and 3, and then Villanova is also interesting. Cincinnati. That's a very, very tough region, but I think, like I said, Virginia's going to have a chip on their shoulder, they don't want to get upset again. So moving to the Midwest, this is North Carolina and Kentucky. And this region is interesting to me because I think in December, if you would have said North Carolina and Kentucky would be the 1 and 2 seeds of a region, people would look at you crazy because both of those teams were kind of struggling at the start of the year and not on their normal pace. They weren't, winning as much as they normally do. And obviously Kentucky loses talent every single year. Same with North Carolina. But like I said, with North Carolina early on, they got blown out by Michigan and just didn't start the best. So that region is kind of cool because I think those teams are both kind of on fire. Then you've got Houston, which I see Houston as kind of like a Buffalo type thing. Really, really good record. Obviously, Houston got a 3 seed, which is much better than Buffalo's 6. Struggling Kansas at a 4. Wouldn't be surprised if they don't make it out of the first weekend. Whether that's getting upset by Northeastern or that's getting upset by Auburn or potentially New Mexico State. Yes, that region is interesting. Iowa State I also see as a team who could make a run just because I feel like Iowa State in football and basketball are just like upset kings. And if they were to beat Ohio State, then they got to match up with Houston. And Iowa State playing in the Big 12, they've played some really good teams this year. Houston, they're just winners. They're not in a great conference, but they're winners. So I think that's an intriguing matchup. And then you got Wofford as well. Wofford's another team like Houston and Buffalo who just win. It doesn't matter, even though they're in smaller conferences, they've just been winning. And so, yeah, that's what I think about that region. And I've got UNC out of that region. I think they're the favorite, obviously, but another really interesting region.
Yeah, it is an interesting region filled with a lot of conference champions. You got Auburn, Utah State, and Iowa State. And even, I think Seton Hall ended up winning their conference, too.
Yeah.
So it's just a packed region.
I think they lost in the championship to Villanova. Yeah. Still, they made their...
Yeah, they made it. They were there. But, yeah, definitely. I want to see, if Wofford can get past Seton Hall, I want to see them against Kentucky because I watched them. Carolina played at Wofford opening game, and they have a point. I think he's a point guard, Fletcher McGee, and he can take over. He's pretty good. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting region because Auburn can get hot from 3, and it'll be interesting to see these teams carry over to the next weekend if they do get past this weekend, especially if they rely on the 3 ball. So it'll be interesting. A lot of good matchups.
Yeah, like you mentioned, a lot of conference champions. I think Auburn winning the SEC championship is going to help them with their confidence and definitely having that matchup against a weaker Kansas team. Not that, I think they probably got a 4 seed because their name's Kansas and they generally are a better team. So that kind of helped with their draw. But Kentucky, North Carolina, 2 very hot teams, struggled early. And, Kentucky lost by 30 to Duke their first game.
Yeah,
the improvement there is incredible. Don't write off Georgia State first round.
Man,
that's facts. We missed them. I don't know how we didn't talk about Georgia State. We actually go to school in Georgia. So we don't go to Georgia State, but we go to school in Georgia. So we're familiar with the college, and obviously it'd be really cool to see Georgia State. Obviously, they upset Baylor, I believe, a few years ago. I think Georgia State was a 15, and Baylor was a 2. R.J. Hunter's shot, So Georgia State's been there, and they've done it. They've completed an upset. So
and last year they were hanging in there with Cincinnati, and they won the conference championship back-to-back years. And they're experienced guys.
They got the talent. Past them. They definitely have the talent there.
Definitely.
And I think they got Houston. So one of those smaller conference teams that I talked about that, they're just used to winning. And
it won't be easy, but
I definitely
wouldn't put it past them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, this year's tournament is going to be a lot of fun. Obviously, we're recording this on Wednesday. It should be uploaded on this Wednesday as well. The first 4 games started last night. Fairleigh Dickinson won and Belmont won. So, Fairleigh Dickinson will play Gonzaga. Belmont will play Maryland. And then tonight we've got North Carolina Central and North Dakota State. playing, and the winner of that will play Duke, and then we've got Arizona State and St. John's, and the winner of that will play Buffalo. So the last first four games are tonight. Tournament starts tomorrow, so this has been kind of our preview for it. If any of you guys got anything else? No? Okay.
What's your pick?
So,
real quick, what's your last pick?
Pick?
What's your championship pick?
Oh, okay. So in this bracket, I've made several, obviously. This bracket, I've got Michigan and Virginia in the championship. All year, just talking to my dad, obviously he's a Michigan fan as well. That's why I am a Michigan fan. I've been telling him all year I'd love to see Michigan and Virginia play in the national championship, just because I think they're two very prestigious programs, very clean programs, great coaches, great players, and I think that'd be a really good, clean basketball game with just two really good teams, and I'd love to see that. And in this one, I've got Michigan and Michigan State playing in the Final Four. Obviously, Michigan State has beat Michigan 3 times this year already, and I think it'd be really, really sweet if we could beat them for the first time this year in the Final Four, where it means the most. So this bracket, I've got Michigan, Virginia in the championship, and Michigan winning. So.
Yeah, in this bracket, I got UNC and Michigan State in the championship, and I got UNC beating them. That'd be the rematch of the 2009 championship, which would be fun to see. A lot of people are talking about UNC Duke Natty, and I mean, that would be insane.
You wouldn't be able to handle that emotionally.
That game, it's never happened before, but this could be the year it happens.
Yeah.
And I think we hear a lot of people being really salty and mad if that happens, but I watched the Duke and UNC ACC tournament game all the way through. The other games I caught a few minutes of them, but that's the best matchup in the country that we know right now. Obviously, Michigan State, Virginia, Michigan, Duke, Gonzaga could have really good matchups too. But of the games we've seen, that's probably the best matchup we've seen all year between two teams. And I wouldn't be mad at all if they played in the championship, just because if they're the two best teams and they made it all the way, then that's what it should be. And we know it'd be a really good game that came down to the last minute. So, Noah, what's your pick?
Yeah, I've actually got Duke over Kentucky. Blue Blood's probably the most hype beast answer you could probably pick would be Duke over Kentucky. But I think it's a lot of talented freshmen. It would be just really fun to watch on a big stage who really grew up over the course of the season.
So those are our picks with these brackets. Probably going to come back next week after the first weekend is over. Then we'll be into the Sweet 16 and Elite 8, which will be next weekend. So maybe early next week we'll come back, kind of recap the first weekend. I'm sure it'll be crazy. And then talk about the matchups going forward into the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. So we can do that next week. But let us know what you guys think in the comments. Your picks, upset picks, whatever it may be. And unless they've got anything else, I think that'll do it for this video. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.